Imagine looking up at a star-filled sky, countless points of light stretching into infinity. Now, imagine being told that your descendants would be just as numerous. It's an incredible thought, isn't it? But what if you were nearly 100 years old, and your wife, who had been unable to have children her entire life, was 90? This is where our story begins, with a man named Abraham and his wife, Sarah. They receive a divine promise from God himself, a promise of a son, and a future filled with descendants as countless as the stars in the heavens and the sand on the seashore. In that moment, standing under the vast, open sky, a seed of hope was planted in Abraham's heart. He believed. But belief, as we all know, is often tested by the one thing we can't control, time. Years turned into a decade, and then another. The promise, once a blazing fire of hope, began to feel like a distant, fading ember. Every sunrise brought the same reality. Abraham was older, Sarah was older, and there was still no child. The silence in their tent was deafening, a constant reminder of the promise that seemed to be slipping away. Doubt, like a slow creeping vine, began to wrap itself around their hearts. Can you blame them? It's one thing to believe in a miracle for a day, a month, or even a year. But for 25 years? The weight was immense. The questions must have been relentless. Did we hear God correctly? Did we misunderstand? Is it even possible anymore? This is a feeling many of us can relate to. We've all had dreams and hopes that felt like they were on an indefinite delay, testing the very limits of our patience and faith. It was in this crucible of waiting and doubt that human logic began to take over. Sarah, weighed down by years of hope and disappointment, came to Abraham with a plan. It was a plan born of love for her husband and a desperate desire to see God's promise fulfilled, but it was a human plan, not a divine one. She suggested that Abraham have a child with her Egyptian handmaiden, Hagar. In their culture, this was a way for a barren wife to provide an heir for her husband. Abraham, perhaps worn down by the long wait himself, agreed. Hagar conceived, and a boy named Ishmael was born. On the surface, it looked like a solution. Abraham had a son. But this was not the son of the promise. Instead of bringing peace, Ishmael's birth brought tension, jealousy, and strife into the household. Sarah's plan to help God had backfired, creating a painful rift in their family that would have consequences for generations. It's a powerful lesson. Sometimes, in our impatience, our attempts to force a situation can create more problems than they solve. The path of faith often requires stillness, not frantic action. 13 more years passed. Abraham was now 99 years old. Ishmael was a teenager. It would have been easy to assume that Ishmael was the fulfillment of the promise, a slightly different version than expected, but the fulfillment nonetheless. But God's plans are not our plans. He appeared to Abraham again, not to approve of the human solution, but to reaffirm his original, impossible promise. He established his covenant, a sacred and unbreakable agreement. And he was specific. I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife shall have a son. This time Sarah was nearby, listening from inside the tent. And when she heard these words, she did something completely understandable. She laughed. It wasn't a laugh of joy, but a laugh of disbelief. A bitter, weary laugh. After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure? She thought to herself, a 90-year-old woman having a baby? It was beyond ridiculous. It was scientifically impossible. It defied every law of nature she knew. Her laughter was the sound of a heart that had hoped for so long it had forgotten how. It was the sound of human limitation clashing with divine possibility. God, hearing her silent laughter, gently challenged her disbelief. Is anything too hard for the Lord? This question echoes through the ages, a direct challenge to all our doubts and fears. It cuts right to the heart of faith. Do we believe in a God who is bound by our understanding of what's possible, or do we believe in a God for whom nothing is impossible? Sarah, flustered and afraid, denied that she had laughed. But God knew her laughter didn't disqualify her from the promise. It just highlighted the sheer magnitude of the miracle that was about to unfold. And just as God had said, the impossible happened. Within the year, at the exact time appointed, Sarah, at 90 years of age, gave birth to a son. They named him Isaac, which means he laughs. This time, the laughter was different. It wasn't the cynical laugh of disbelief, but the pure, unadulterated laughter of joy. Sarah declared, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." The name that once represented her doubt now became the symbol of her greatest joy. The birth of Isaac was more than just a happy ending for an old couple. It was the resounding fulfillment of a divine promise. It was the physical proof that God is faithful, even when we are not. It was the ultimate demonstration that His timing is perfect and His power is limitless. For Abraham and Sarah, holding Isaac in their arms was the culmination of a lifetime of waiting, wrestling, and ultimately believing. The long years of silence, the pain of their missteps, the agony of doubt, it all faded in the light of this miracle. Their faith, once wavering, was now forged into something unbreakable. Isaac wasn't just their son, he was the living embodiment of God's faithfulness. He was the next link in the chain that would one day lead to a nation and, ultimately, to the hope of all humanity. The story of Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac is not just an ancient tale. It's a timeless testament to the power of hope and the importance of patience. It reminds us that even when circumstances seem impossible, when the weight feels unbearable, and when our faith is worn thin, God's promises remain true. Their journey teaches us that our timeline is not God's timeline, and our understanding of what's possible is often far too small. It's a story for anyone who has ever felt like giving up, for anyone who has laughed in disbelief at the thought of their deepest dreams coming true. It encourages us to hold on, to trust in the unseen, and to remember the question that God posed to Sarah: is anything too hard for the Lord? The answer, beautifully demonstrated in the joyful laughter that filled Abraham's tent, is a resounding no. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that explores the depths of faith and hope.